But we have had the triumphant return of Democrat of the Day. Tuesday, we had Ken Martin on from the DFL. Yesterday, Kayla Berg, a representative from 56B. And joining us also from District 56, the senator from that district, is Lindsey Port, and one of my friends and one of the just most wonderful people I know. A lucky district is 56 to have Lindsey Port as their senator. She's kind enough to join us and talk about their first year in office and the upcoming election. Senator Port, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
Thanks for coming on back. I'm very glad you're here. I should mention, someone asked me this question and they're like, wait a second here. Didn't we just elect the senators? I don't think we've ever actually talked about it. Because of the census and because of the redistricting, the Senate is back up for re-election this upcoming November, correct?
That is right. We get the lucky honor of running again after just 2 years.
Now, will you have to run again in 2024, or will you then be in a 4-year term?
Nope, then it'll be 4 years. So it's 2 4-year terms, but then after that, it'll be another 2 around the census again.
Joy. That's always the best part of being a politician. I can already tell you. Actually, let's talk about the best part of being a politician. Although with the Republican leadership in the Senate, it's not been that great. You have actually been able to be in the Senate for a year here. Let's talk about some of the things you've experienced and some of the accomplishments that you've been able to make as being a senator in the Minnesota Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say actually my favorite part of being in the Senate is closely tied to my favorite part of being a candidate, and that's talking to the people of my community. I really... That part of my job is the best part of my job because I think it's both how we get the best candidates, but it's also how we get the best legislation by working with those in our communities and who are really closely connected to issues. So last year was a weird year to be our first year in the Senate because the Capitol was closed. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of virtual meetings. Committees were all virtual. And the Senate was pretty empty. It was just us there. So, this year we're still not really sure what to expect, but we found a lot of ways to connect with our constituents and folks all over the state. And I hope we'll be able to do more in person this year, but certainly everybody's safety is paramount. So we'll still be being creative and finding ways to get people connected even when we can't be there in person.
One of the things that's interesting, I talked to Representative Berg yesterday, and I asked her how the remote sessions, how did she feel? I mean, it was kind of hard for her to gauge because that was her first term there. But I said, did you feel like it was hampering your ability to legislate? How do you feel? I mean, the Senate, was it a case where you feel as if you were able to accomplish what you needed to accomplish there, even though it was remote?
I think we were able to accomplish quite a lot last year. We passed historic funding in housing and great work in education. But I will say that the Capitol is one of my favorite places in Minnesota. It is filled with the people like it's supposed to be. And I think last year with having the Capitol closed, it really kind of let the political games take over a little bit because the people weren't there. The halls weren't filled with them. We literally couldn't hear the people's voices. But for a lot of us, myself certainly in this, we worked really hard to make sure that still what we were hearing was connected to our community. We did a lot of virtual town halls and community groups, roundtables, things like that, to make sure that we were still hearing those voices. But, it's easy in the legislature for sort of that political gamesmanship to take over, and that felt like it had more space last year to grow because we weren't sort of surrounded by the people and being held accountable in that same way. So I think, with the Capitol closed and with more remote happening, it was up to the legislators to make sure that the voices of our communities were really what we were most connected to. And, that's not a priority for everyone.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, let's put the kind of the ugliness out there. The Republican leadership in the Senate wasn't exactly. I mean, their mentality on many days seemed to be sit down, shut up. We'll tell you when we want you to talk. In regards to the Democrats. And they weren't really willing to work with the other side of the aisle that much, and basically were forcing an agenda through the Senate on their own thing. That was with Gazelka. Do you feel as if the new Senate Majority Leader in Miller is going to have a different approach, or are you kind of preparing yourself for more of the same thing?
You know, I try to be optimistic.
Okay.
I have, I think as president, when he was, when Senator Miller was the president of the Senate, he did, try to give some opportunities for fairness. And I hope that continues as majority leader, but, we'll have to wait and see on that. Unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of interactions over the interim. So I think, the next few weeks, and certainly as we start session on the 31st, we'll get a pretty clear picture pretty quickly.
Well, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Jan Malcolm in the Minnesota Department of Health. I mean, if they walk in the door and the first thing is they're saying we're going to fire the health director in the middle of, as we're, getting through the Omicron variant here, I think it's going to set up a bad tone. But it is election year, and, Republicans love playing politics.
Absolutely. Jan Malcolm has been an incredible leader through a very difficult time in our state, and protecting her, making sure that we don't have hiccups in the real coverage for care that Minnesotans need, and the access to information is absolutely vital. I would say the same is very true of our Commissioner of Housing, Commissioner Jennifer Ho. She is a phenomenal advocate, and it's a moment when we can't have, we can't have those political challenges or that political gamesmanship get in the way of access to important programs that Minnesotans need right now. So, I am hopeful that won't be sort of the first thing out of the gate, but if it is, we are ready and prepared to stand up and fight for the real good work that those women have done on behalf of our state, and we won't back down on that.
It's got to be hard because let's just be honest. This is how the Republicans are going to operate. When there's a Democrat as a governor and they're in charge of the Senate, they're going to hold their hostages. And as Kurt Doubt, the House minority leader said, perform an occasional execution if they need to, if they feel as if they have to get a point across. The crime is, and they're always going to do that. Whenever that's the case, it's going to be the Democratic governor and the Republicans in charge of the Senate. What they're banking on is if the Democrats get in charge of the Senate and Republican governors out there, that they're not going to behave like them. I think that it's, there comes a point where if this is the new standard, I mean, I understand no one likes ugly politics, but if you're creating two different tiers for whatever party's in control, it makes it for a very difficult chance to be able to govern, especially when you have a Democratic governor. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. We hope that we're all playing by the same rules, but, we've seen it this year across the country, especially surrounding democracy, that Republicans are willing to lie to their constituents. And frankly, they're not held accountable for it. So there's no incentive for them not to do that. And it really has poisoned the way that, the trust that people have in government. And I think it's important that we call that out for the lie that it is, because it is seeping in all of these different ways, from commissioners to democracy, to COVID and the preparedness that we have for the pandemic and that we've been able to do for the pandemic.
Yeah,
it's sad, but I think we need to say it out loud because, being honest about that is what allows us to really put it to the voters and say, are you going to accept this? I have faith in the people of Minnesota. And I think, the more that we can talk about the things that the people of Minnesota need, focus on getting some of those done. I'm hopeful that they won't buy into what the Republicans are selling, and instead buy into investing in our communities and making sure that we have a strong path to a bright future for all of us.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would love to see the DFL in St. Paul. I'd love to see them run ads in every one of these Republican senators' districts saying, hey, who was the one that was telling you that vaccines aren't necessarily important and masks are not a big deal? I would love to see them, but you did bring up the other point. Their constituents, the people that keep voting for them, hear the lies, they know they're lying, and it just doesn't stop them. I mean, they themselves are they are getting the representation that they have voted for. And I don't know how you bust through those lies and make people realize this is not helping, but it's not helping. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge all across the country because it's pretty easy to find the lies at this point. And I think it's our job continue to reach out all across Minnesota and to say there's a place for you in a better future. What that looks like across Minnesota is different, certainly, but it looks like having a dignified job and being paid, living wages for it, having a safe home that is stable, and having a good education for our kids. And I think that there are things that we can come together on, and we just need to continue to push and show that there is hope. I think a lot of people are feeling really hopeless right now. I know after 2 years of a pandemic, it gets to me. But the reality is, we are stronger together. And Minnesota is an exceptional state for a lot of reasons, and we have an attitude of exceptionalism here. And we need to live up to that.
I agree with you, but my hope is that the Senate goes back to the Democrats come November, and then we can fix a lot of these problems starting next year, that's for sure. You talked about Lindsey Port is joining us, Senator 56. We should mention that district is Savage, Burnsville, and Lakeville, correct?
That's right. Yep.
And you talk about your communication with the constituents, because all politics is local. You are talking to the people in 56. Talk about what they're wanting you to try to address this upcoming session.
Absolutely. The number one thing I'm hearing right now is affordable housing. We're hearing it just so deeply, both from homeowners, from renters, from folks who want to become homeowners, that, the cost of housing is it's out of reach at this point. And we really need to address that. It's not just in my district, but it's a huge issue in my district. It's something we need to address statewide. And with the budget surplus, I'm really hoping that it is one of our main priorities. We really need to make a massive investment in both new homes and preserving current affordable homes, and also rent stabilization help.
Okay. And obviously, and I talked a little bit with Representative Berg about this yesterday, that the reason why, is you are seeing the demographics of the district, they're changing. And when I was a kid in the 80s and I was going to high school, Burnsville was almost a farm community at that point still. There were still wide open swaths. It has become much more urban. There is there's jobs, there's people down there. It's a great place to live. I've talked about you talked yesterday. Fantastic parks down in your district. I've hiked a lot of them. And they are just wonderful. So it is it's got an appeal, but you have to make sure that the housing is not just either low income housing apartments or massive McMansions. You have to have an equalized housing program throughout all the levels, correct?
Absolutely, and we have to have opportunities, for folks who are renters and want to become home buyers to have those sort of entry-level homes, and those are disappearing, and we really need to make investments in keeping those naturally occurring affordable houses they're a little bit older. We've got to make sure that those don't all get snapped up by investors and turned into, flipped and turned into out of reach expensive housing. We're hearing across the state that investment firms are picking those up and turning them into Airbnbs. And, those are homes that people in our community need. And we need to make sure that we are investing in keeping them affordable for folks in our community. Matt, and I will say, too, the district has changed a lot in 10 years. It really, really has. It's really built out primarily. There's a little room yet in Savage, but it is pretty built out. And the demographics of the district have changed, too, and we have a much more diverse population. And I see that as an incredible strength for our district. And I think, making sure that we are also looking at everything with an eye to equity, and how are we making sure that all of the different groups in our communities feel like they have a voice and a part in our community is really important as we sort of embark on whatever the new lines around our district will be, that we're finding space to make room for everyone to have a seat at the table.
I have a feeling I was looking at when you talk about redistricting, I was looking at the Republican maps. Ha! Yeah, sure, they're going to go along with those. And we are going to be looking at, just the demographics of things and how things are going to shift. There is going to be a lot of opportunity here for the Democrats to indeed pick up the Senate here. I mean, it's not that big of a seat majority. And when you look at how the population growth has gone, if the Republicans can't gerrymander the living daylights out of districts, there's going to be some potential there for that. Not only you could get going back in there, and by all means, everyone down in Senate District 56, you want Lindsey Port back in St. Paul for sure. But then you're going back in there in the majority party.
Absolutely. It's so important for us to really get things done for Minnesota. And if we have fair maps, there really is a lot of opportunity for us to pick up some seats. We've got some great candidates all across the state, in those western suburbs, down in Rochester, all the sort of northeast suburbs. There's a lot of opportunity for us to pick up seats, and we've got phenomenal candidates that are working really hard right now. And I'm working hard with the Senate caucus campaign to make sure that those candidates are feeling supported, are able to build the teams that they need in their communities. I love campaigns. I think it's our best opportunity to talk to our communities. And so we're digging in really hard and making sure that not only are we running strong candidates and raising money and doing all of those basic things, but that we're running campaigns that are connected to our communities all across the state of Minnesota.
I know the Republicans got a target on you. They want that seat back. I've got my senator is Ron Latz. Love Ron. He's fantastic. And of course, Cheryl Yuki is my House member. And the reality is I'm feeling pretty good. Both of those guys are going to go back to St. Paul, at least my district. It has a tendency of leaning just a smidge to the DFL side in the Hopkins, St. Louis Park area. But what I will say is that, I'm going to help my local candidates. But here's an opportunity for you. Lindsey Port is probably my favorite politician in the state right now. She is true leadership. She's inspirational. She is just wonderful, and we need her in St. Paul. If you're in a relatively safe Democratic district, great. Help your local person by all means. But if you can, make a donation, volunteer, help out with Lindsey's campaign. Make sure we get her back in St. Paul for Senate District 56. Make the Republicans angry about that. The website people need to go to, Senator, what's the one they should head to?
LindseyPortMN.com.
Lindsey Port, LindseyPortMN.com. That's Senator Lindsey Port. Like I said, volunteer. And it's Savage, Burnsville, and Lakeville. You can do this on any weekend. You can go down and give them a hand. Volunteer, donate if you can. Senator Lindsey Port, Senate District 56. Senator, thank you very much. I appreciate the time today.
Thanks so much for having me, Matt.
My pleasure. Democrat of the day, Senator Lindsey Port. And like I said, probably my favorite politician in the state right now. She truly is very inspirational, and I feel lucky that I actually can call her a friend. I think she's just sensational. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.